Kordell, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
What's going on, guys? I cannot complain, man. I just heard you run off a monologue about the Steelers and some of those emotions that are unleashed emotions running around that organization that make you wonder if this team is really focused on what's truly important. That's trying to get the 7 Vince Lombardi there in the organization of Pittsburgh. But, it's the same old thing, guys. I mean, you mentioned Ben Roethlisberger, and I'm a Steeler through and through. But one thing I know for sure when we were there, and even these great organizations you have throughout the National Football League, the ones that are winning on a consistent basis, and that's the team in New England, you don't hear too much noise coming out of there. And if you do, it's suppressed immediately. It doesn't take long to shut it down. But in Pittsburgh, it's a constant thing, whether it's, as you mentioned, Ben Roethlisberger going back and forth with basically saying he don't know if he's coming back, to Le'Veon Bell holding out for some time. And you understand it because he wanted to get a long-term deal. He didn't want to be stuck with the franchise tag. But then it resurfaces going into one of the bigger games, I would say, of this organization's season this year, because you saw what happened the last time in October 8th, what Jacksonville ended up doing to them, holding Ben Roethlisberger to 5 interceptions and had Le'Veon Bell rush, I think, only for 40-some-odd yards against them. So it was a very ugly game, to say the least. But this is not the time to have conversation. But the best thing I think Le'Veon Bell did, he squashed it by going on his Twitter feed, basically saying that he's not concerned about nothing but trying to get the 7 Vince Lombardi. But that should have been the initial, or if someone was around and wanted to leak the information out, that it's more about winning and not a contract.
Kordell, tell me, why do you think the Steelers have this more than anyone else? As you said, it would be squashed anywhere immediately, and yet the Steelers kind of feel like a never-ending drama show. Why is Pittsburgh constantly the center of this?
Well, it's funny. I don't go back to Pittsburgh all the time. I may talk to some people back there, but I'm not in the locker room. So in all fairness, I couldn't tell you, is it the mentality of Coach Mike Tomlin? Is it the energy of Ben Roethlisberger? But Ben is the leader on this football team. And sometimes you follow the trend of the leader, the one that's the outspoken one. And I think the majority of guys will follow that lead, and that's what it seems like. So if it's Mike Tomlin, or if it's just the temperament of society today when it comes to sports because of social media, I think maybe we as pundits, because now I jumped over to the other side, but I am now on the other side, is maybe we have to transition our ears and our eyes and our thought process on how we actually cover the National Football League now, because it's totally different than what it used to be. Back in the day, it was almost, the conversation of loose lips sink ships. Now it's everyone has loose lips other than the team like the New England Patriots. But maybe this is just the lay of the land now, where guys are capable of Arian Foster, going back to him when he was with the Houston Texans, and I remember him. I think he tweeted his hamstring, injury that he had on Twitter, on Twitter feed, and gave the world an opportunity to see how it was recovering. And that's the worst thing you could do when it comes to injuries, is giving, reporting it to the National Football League so everyone can know, let alone having the guys on the street, the civilians that actually love the sport, having a chance to see what's going on. So it's just gotten to the point where, man, to answer your question, I can't tell you what it is. Maybe it's the water, maybe it's the emotions of the city and the sense of how passionate they are, and they just want to maybe win. But sometimes you just can't let some things out of the locker room, man. Some things you just have to keep close to the vest and hopefully deal with it during the offseason.
Kordell Stewart, former member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, former Pro Bowler with the Steelers, former Pittsburgh Steelers team MVP, joining us here on the show now, hosting on the TuneIn platform. And, when it comes to this game, the Jacksonville Jaguars have a really good defense, but not a lot of people giving them much of a shot. Do you think that Jacksonville can put a scare into Pittsburgh this weekend?
Well, I think they already are a little nervous, to be honest. And this is the reason why I say that. And it is no one actually saying anything out of the camp to indicate they are or they aren't. It's just when Blake Bortles can throw for under 100 yards in the game and beat you with their running back and Leonard Fournette rushing for like 180-something odd yards, but the quarterback threw for under 100 yards and you lose 30-9. It's hard to explain in your mind how did that happen, other than knowing the defense had 5 interceptions, 1 taken back for a touchdown. If that's the recipe, going back to the 2000 Super Bowl team that was won by the Baltimore Ravens with Trent Dilfer, had arguably the best defense in the history of the National Football League, and that's even jumping over the 1985 Chicago Bears defense that was led by Mike Singletary. You had an offense that had Jamal Lewis that gave you 2,000 yards rushing, and you had a quarterback in Trent Dilfer who was just a guy at that time. Okay, so, when you look at how they play the game, this is somewhat similar. I mean, they end up beating a Buffalo Bills team last week with their quarterback not turning the football over, throwing for 87 yards. But this is the stat that I think most people need to really appreciate and understand about this team and how they win. When the quarterback does not turn the football over, they win. I don't care if he throws for 5 yards. I don't care if he throws for 45 yards. Just look it up. When he does not turn the football over, this team wins. It doesn't matter if he throws one interception. It doesn't matter if he goes one touchdown. It doesn't matter if he throws 20 or 24, throwing one touchdown the latter part of the game and throw for 87 yards with no no interceptions, they still win the football game. So I think that's a part of the game. Defense, arguably, when it comes to interceptions and turnovers and taking it back to the house and get points, or setting the team up to kick a field goal similar to what they did against the L.A. Chargers. Think about it. 2 consecutive possessions. Blake Bortles throw 2 interceptions. That game is supposed to be over. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's supposed to be over.
Yep.
But what do? The defense gets an interception, runs it back, put him in field goal position. The former player that played with the Chargers, he ends up kicking it through the uprights. They win the football game. Unbelievable. It doesn't happen often. But they have a recipe, I think, with the Jacksonville Jaguars that tells you 2 of their biggest games of the year. Against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he throws for 95 yards. Against the Buffalo Bills, after not being in the playoffs, in the postseason, I think after 13 years or so, he throws for 87 yards with no interception. And they win both those football games. If they go on the road and they intimidate Ben well enough to cause this to have to be a game where he throws the football and they can't run it well like they did last time in the last game, you may see a Jacksonville Jaguars team in the AFC Championship with their quarterback potentially throwing for less than 100 yards.
Kordell Stewart spent more than a decade in the NFL. He joins us here on CBS Sports Radio. As a former quarterback yourself, I really want to get your thoughts on Nick Foles. Do you believe in Nick Foles this weekend and beyond in the postseason?
Is it we comparing him against Carson Wentz, or it's just Nick Foles? It is not requiring an answer, but it's just creating this, because that's what we're gauging Nick Foles off of. We're gauging Nick Foles and what he can do for this offense based on what Carson Wentz has done. And over the last few weeks, it's been pretty scary, to be honest with you, with what Nick Foles has been doing. I mean, it hasn't been the ugliest, but at the same time, it's been some stuff that caused you to scratch your head when he plays. Now, here's the thing. He's done well in that system before with Andy Reid. He's done well before in that system. He's done well before in Kansas City in that same system. And Doug Peterson was on both those teams that Nick Foles was a part of. But my thing is, at the end of the day, are they asking Nick Foles to have to go out and actually win the football game? If they're asking him to go out to win the football game, they're going to lose, because he's not that quarterback in my mind that's capable of going out and being able to produce as well as he can. I mean, you have a running game with Clemens, Smallwood, Jay Ajayi, who I know is the happiest man on earth, getting released out of Miami when you heard Adam Gase basically saying that he doesn't know what to do because, the guys are just not responding well. He's doing pretty well up there in Philadelphia. And then you have LeGarrette Blount, who we've seen be last year the leading rusher when it comes to the most touchdowns in the National Football League. And I think his big body is one that's going to be needed in this type of game. He's not going to be needed to win the football game. He's just going to be the one that not screw it up, because I think this defense with Chris Long and Fletcher Cox and all these guys on the defensive side of the football and how they play, I think it's more than enough. Correct? I think it is. And I think the offense that they have, I think is really good. Alshon Jeffries, and company, and Felix, all these guys. They really are good. But it's just a matter of when the mistakes are made by Nick Foles, how bad are they? Will they be so bad to the point where they can't recover because maybe his confidence may be low or what have you? But he doesn't have to try to win the game. I would say he just has to not screw it up, because he has too much talent around him to put this team in position to have to play from behind. This Atlanta Falcons team that's coming to town is hitting on all cylinders. They're really excited. They have the energy. They've been here before. But Matt Ryan hasn't been playing the best of football neither as of lately. Played well against the Rams last week, But over the past few weeks prior to that, he struggled just a little bit too, and it's just going to be a matter of what Steve Sarkisian is going to do with that offense. Is he going to give Coleman and Freeman the opportunity to play the clock game, to burn it down and get the ball to Sanu in those, maybe 5-yard routes or maybe those 12-yard routes just to get the ball in their hand and make plays and keep Nick Foles on the sideline because he hasn't played that much? It's all about strategy now because, this is an indoor team that has to travel on the road in inclement weather, so you have to assume it's going to be probably, in the 20s, maybe 30s. You never know. Things may change within a weekend of an eye in that part of the country. But I like Philadelphia in this case, in this matter. But I just think Nick Foles does not need to try to go out and win the football game. I would say just don't screw it up and play within the scheme of what they're doing and just stay ahead of down and distance. If they can stay ahead of down and distance and create some methodical drives of 8 to 9, maybe 10-play drives and get touchdowns and not just points, I think they'll make it a very hard day for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kordell Stewart is co-host of NFL No Huddle. That's on TuneIn, airing Monday through Friday, weekdays, 4 until 7 Eastern Time, featuring Kordell alongside Brian Weber, covering all the hot topics from around the NFL, interviews with current and former players, coaches, as well as media personalities, and they'll be broadcasting live from Super Bowl 52 and Radio Row. You can follow Kordell on Twitter as well, at K/10. Kordell, man, I always love catching up to you and picking your brain, and I will see you in Minnesota, man. We'll catch up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, we'll catch up in a couple weeks. I just tell you this. If you want to know about the weather, I've looked on it over the next 5 days. Everything, the low is -5 degrees. So get ready, man. It's going to be crazy up that place. I can't wait.
Can't wait to see you, buddy. Thanks again.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Kordell Stewart joining us here on the show.